this evolution on the discovery side, in terms of how drug discovery is going to rapidly accelerate, but at the same time, it will get more complex simply because of what we are seeing with rare diseases, that now we have an opportunity to bring therapeutic. Diseases that did not have a solution or a way to solve for them or a way to treat them. Now there is hope and there is an opportunity. And this is the beauty of science.
Welcome to Unnatural Selection, a show about competition, innovation, and the strategies shaping tomorrow's frontiers. I'm Nick Encina. Each week, we speak with pioneers shaping the future.
This is episode 42. In today's conversation, we sit down with Prahlad Singh, CEO of Revvity, to explore the evolution of the life sciences and diagnostics industry. We discuss Revvity's bold rebranding, from a traditional tools provider to a high-value partner delivering end-to-end solutions. Prahlad shares how the company is embracing agility, innovation, and data-driven platforms like Signals to help clients navigate the complexity of emerging sciences, from genomics and multi-omics to precision medicine, where opportunity and challenge are greater than ever. Dr. Prahlad Singh is president and CEO of Revvity, with more than 25 years of leadership experience working for global healthcare companies. Prahlad is professionally and personally motivated by the opportunity to make a positive impact on the world. Under his leadership, Revvity's 11,000 employees deliver best-in-class solutions and service to a diverse range of organizations, advancing science that expands human health and improves lives worldwide. Before his current role, Prahlad served as president and CEO of PerkinElmer prior to it rebranding to Revvity, a position he was appointed to in 2019. During his time in this role, Prahlad led the company through a period of significant transformation, stewarding the organization through the COVID-19 pandemic and overseeing its dramatic portfolio evolution. He was also at the helm when the company completed the divestiture of its applied food and enterprise services businesses to New Mountain Capital, which resulted in the creation of Revvity. Prior to joining PerkinElmer in 2014, Prahlad was general manager of GE Healthcare's women's health business. He has also held senior executive level roles in strategy, business development, and mergers and acquisitions at both GE Healthcare and Philips Healthcare. Born and raised in India, Prahlad holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Bombay. He moved to the United States to continue his academic career at the University of Missouri-Columbia, where he earned a PhD in chemistry. Prahlad also holds an MBA from Northeastern University's DeMoore McKim School of Business. Prahlad currently serves on the board of directors of Amphenol Corporation and the Analytical, Life Science and Diagnostics Association, ALDA. Additionally, he is a member of the Massachusetts General Hospital President's Council and an honoree of the Ascend Foundation's 2023 A-List Awards, recognizing outstanding Pan-Asian leaders. Let's go.
Prahlad, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for being on Unnatural Selection.
Glad to be here, Nick.
You and I obviously go back a long way, and so it's going to be, for the sake of the audience, I'll pretend that we just got to know each other, and I'm asking you some questions that I know the answers to. But to get started, I always start with the same signature question to give you a chance to level set and set the foundation for the people listening. Could you please let us know what need or impact drives your work?
I think the way I think of it is there are two primary drivers, Nick, that motivates me. One is to see science come to life from the lab bench to directly impacting the health and well-being of people, whether it's through the development of new therapies or through screening and diagnosis of diseases and disorders. So that really is a primary motivator. But on a personal level, the opportunity to motivate others and see them succeed and really grow both professionally and personally through their journey at Revvity is a big motivating factor as well.
That's excellent. And then for listeners unfamiliar with Revvity's core business, could you describe the company's scale and scope today and how it has evolved over your leadership?
Yes, so Revvity today is approximately $2.8 billion in revenue and about 11,000 employees, and globally pretty well dispersed and direct in more than 150 countries. You know, in terms of the journey of the portfolio transformation that the company has gone through, at least over the past 7 years, is pretty remarkable. And just to give you a few data points to illustrate what the company's gone through, it's not just evolved, but it's pretty much completely transformed. Only 30% of the company's revenue today was part of the company 7, 8 years ago. We did 12 acquisitions in 2 years during the COVID period. We divested a third of the company, changed the name, changed its culture and focus over that period of time. So primarily, what we have focused on is transforming the business to pivot into areas of high market growth, to areas which are much more durable and sustainable in markets where we have more leading positions, and ones those are less cyclical but higher margin. So sort of that has been the North Star through which we've been guiding the company's transformation. If you look at what is happening in the world today from a technological advancement perspective, at that time, PerkinElmer really needed to transform itself into something that was new and different and reposition the business for the future. Our focus was to be able to quickly react to the changing market conditions, the changing scientific priorities that were in front of us, and ones that our customers were uncovering at the same time, whether it's through automation, machine learning, AI, but ones that can have a profound impact on human life. And exactly that is what our intention was when we started putting Revvity together. And maybe give you a couple of tidbits around that. Just look at the changing regulatory and economic environment, the technology from a technology perspective, the shift that was going on. Our focus was how could we transition the company, so rather than be a vendor, it was more of a partner in how we work with them side by side in these scientific discoveries as the times were changing. And as a result of this, I think we've now uniquely positioned the company compared to our peers in a sense that we now have a portfolio together in life sciences and diagnostics. And I think strategically, our crown jewel is the software franchise, which well, that is now a backbone to so much of the scientific discovery work that our customers are doing.
It's incredible. And what I don't want to gloss over the scope of the rebranding. And so what I'm going to read is a little bit of just the history there for people that may not be familiar, and then we can unpack that a little bit more. But for nearly 80 years, the name PerkinElmer was synonymous with a vast array of scientific tools, diagnostics, and services across multiple sectors, including food safety, environmental monitoring, and healthcare. However, in 2023, under your leadership, Prahlad, the company executed a profound strategic transformation. It divested its environmental businesses, and the remaining highly focused entity comprising life sciences and diagnostic portfolio was relaunched as Revvity, which it's a name combining revolutionize and vita, the Latin word for life. This was a deliberate strategic pivot to create a specialized end-to-end solutions provider positioned to lead the convergence of pharma, diagnostics, and data in the age of precision medicine. And so with that, I just think it's tremendous, and you rarely hear about such all-encompassing rebrands, right? So I think if we take a step back, and it was covered in a Harvard Business School case study as well, because of just the scope again of this change, going from an 80-year-old brand that people knew to Revvity. There was tremendous amount of obviously strategy and thinking behind this, as you just described. You're really positioning yourself for the future. I'm sure that there were all kinds of challenges and obstacles and people questioning whether this was the right thing to do. Can you tell us a little bit about just kind of like the logistics and the actual implementation of this, what kind of forces did you feel as you were moving towards this?
Well, I think the day and age that we live in today, you see what happens when you do a brand change. You know, there are enough examples out in the media over the past few weeks as to what happens when you try to change a logo or a brand or a name of a company. And here we were taking an 80-year-old established brand name, in the analytical space and saying, no, I mean, this aligns very well with what PerkinElmer is today and was over the past 80 years. But it doesn't really align with where do we want to take the company. And then I think, look, obviously there were sleepless nights because you are jumping into the unknown,
Hmm.
essentially, right? From a from a place of comfort. And that never is one that lacks excitement or uncertainty or self-doubt. But what we did not doubt at all is what the intent was. And Revvity was in our mind a symbol of change because we were really changing the focus of the company, the end markets that we were going to play in, the portfolio transformation that was coming together. And it did require a change in mindset, in name, and in identity. And that was the primary driver. Because if you're going to go from more of an instrument, analytical, food, and services company to one where you're partnering in scientific discoveries, providing the software, providing the reagents, providing the tools and capabilities to customers to be able to unravel rapid discoveries, not just in small molecule space, but in biologicals, in cell therapy, you needed to come out with a new identity. And that was the primary driving force.
I mean, I commend you. I respect that so much because I've interviewed Steven Sasson, the man who discovered the portable digital camera Kodak, the CEO, former CEO of Blockbuster. And so you hear these stories about companies being disrupted and not having the ability to cope with that institutional inertia enough to be able to change themselves before it's too late. And and yet it's not an easy and trivial thing to do. It takes an enormous amount of courage and foresight to think about what it takes to disrupt yourself and reinvent yourself, and not just reinvent like a product line or a department. What you've done is you've said, the name PerkinElmer has worked well for the past 80 years and it's working well right now. But where we anticipate the needs of the company going, it doesn't align with that history. And so what we're going to do is we're going to disrupt ourselves and redefine ourselves in a very intentional way that aligns with what that vision is. And for the sake of people listening, this is not, again, something that is just done flippantly. It takes an enormous amount of planning and work, and again, bravery to be able to do that and go through the motion. And so, from my understanding, this was something that was a year-long transformation. Now that that change has been implemented, has the outcome in terms of customer perception, internal alignment, or market valuation matched the original vision of how you intended this for this to unfold?
I think it's a journey and it's still a journey. And for two or three reasons I would point out. One, it takes time for customers to get used to something new. You know, and then I think that I would say probably in the second half of 2024 and in the first half of 2025, we've started seeing that transition happen, wherein you go to a customer and then the former company's name comes out first, and then say, oh no, but wait, you guys are not PerkinElmer. So that's a journey, and I think it will take time. It will continue to take time, just like any new adoption of anything new does. Uh, the second aspect on the same on in the same vein is, as I said, 30% of the revenue was there 7 years ago. So everything that is the other 70% is through acquisitions. And we've acquired 12 companies, and two of them I'll specifically point out that have strong brand entities of their own: BioLegend on the life sciences side and Euroimmune on the diagnostic side. So, you've also become a house of brands that you are trying to now adapt into what Revvity will look like. That's an internal journey, an internal transition that takes place. The thing that probably has not gone to our expectation, and we need to continue to work on that, is the end market. Our expectation was the end markets would grow in the 4 to 6% range. Unfortunately, the end markets over the past 2.5, 3 years have either been flat or slightly negative. So while we have had differentiated growth, we've grown a couple of hundred bips better than the market growth. In order to show the true power of the portfolio, we need to start seeing the pharma biotech market, the life sciences industry, get back to what is more of a normal market growth in the 4 to 6% range. And that is when the true essence of what the power of the portfolio is will be able to demonstrate to our customers, our employees, and more importantly, our shareholders.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned a couple things earlier about the crown jewels of the focus now being around data and digital services. And then you also mentioned that part of the rebranding was to position yourself less as a tools provider and more as a partner to your clients, right? And your clients are vast. I mean, it's from labs, research, pharmaceutical, biotech, and healthcare. Um, if we think about how these fields have been almost converging in a way. The boundaries are a little bit blurry, right? So traditional data companies are now doing more in the healthcare space. Life sciences and diagnostics companies are more doing in software. Now you're seeing maybe a little bit more of the companies kind of like Verily, Microsoft, biotech, you're doing some of that. And especially as you become more of a partner, those boundaries are a little bit blurred. Can you tell us a little bit more about how Revvity is positioning itself relative to all these blurring lines? I know part of it is being a partner, but how does that make you feel where now you're seeing a lot of overlap with, say, for example, traditionally data intensive companies like the Microsofts? Do you see them more as competition, as partners, as symbiotic? How do you see these morphing divisions nowadays?
Yeah. So, Nick, let me break it down into a few pieces because there was a lot packed into that question, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I think fundamentally, the life sciences industry at this point is on the cusp of a transformational change. One, that we believe strongly that it compress the traditional timelines and revolutionize how we approach human health. And I think one of the biggest drivers for that is, as we are witnessing, the AI has fundamentally transformed the conventional design, make, test, decide scientific process that used to be there. You know, we are entering a world where we will have AI models that will generate, predict, and screen upfront, with downstream experimental work validating these in silico predictions. So I think that day is not far where the actual translational work, understanding the complex in vivo and cellular environments, will still, will still require, sophisticated wet lab validation, one that our instruments and assays provide. But the fundamental driver will be on the software side. And that's where, as you pointed out, our signals franchise is one that becomes the fundamental center around how drug discovery will AI or with AI will take place. And this is where, some of the companies that name, we view them more as partners rather than as competitors, because honestly, we are a software, you can look at us both. We are a software company with the right life sciences tool that enhances the development of the right software. Or we are a life sciences company that can be supplemented with the software that becomes the nucleus of drug discovery. So that's where I think we strongly believe we are uniquely positioned.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in full transparency, I was a part of PerkinElmer back in the day at this point, 8, 9 years ago. And the advent of the Signals platform was everything that you just mentioned, right? So PerkinElmer sits in this unique position of providing the tools and services that generate the data. So the lab instrumentation and other tools that live in the lab. So they're capturing, generating data. And so it really positioned PerkinElmer and Revvity to be in a place to be a more value-added partner to say, we're not just going to generate the data and then hand it to you and then it's your problem. We can do more with that. We can actually help you everything from storing it to analyzing it to translating it to empowering you to be able to make decisions off of that to discover and create better science. And so that was the premise behind the Signals platform, and I take personal pride in being a part of that journey, because it really is at the end of the day. And this was back 10 years ago. People were talking about how data was the new oil, especially in our industries of healthcare and life sciences.
Yeah, for the listeners, I'll embarrass you by saying that if it's pretty well known that I think you were one of the chief architects and the one who named what Signals platform is called today. So I think you should definitely take pride in that, and especially where the company and the business has taken it from where it was a decade ago to where it is. Now, I think, Nick, the beauty of Signals is today, it plays an important role in helping scientists, as you said, organize, capture, and make sense of the data that comes out of their experiment. You could say that we are deeply embedded in what the wet science is today. They are hands-on work happening at the bench. But now what's more exciting is how molecular design is evolving. With AI and machine learning increasingly moving the first steps of discovery out of the lab and into the computer, that is where Signals has got a fundamental advantage in terms of how it can help design, develop, and be the hub around how drug discovery will happen.
Yeah, I've used the analogy before, which is you you understand your clients so well that when they ask you for something, you ask the higher level question, which is, okay, you're asking to buy an instrument, but what you really want is a solution for something, right? So it's somebody saying like, I want to buy a camera. And you're like, okay, but what do you really want? Oh, you want the photograph of your family over the fireplace. Well, you can provide the camera, the photographer, the development lab, all the way through the hammer and the nail to put it up there with a measuring tape. And what you're saying is, what we want to do is solve the problem for you. If you want the picture up there, we can do that for you and walk you through the entire process so you actually have your solution. If you want the camera, we can give you that as well. But what we're trying to do is a value-added partner to you to solve an actual problem, not just give you point solutions.
Exactly. We are not providing disparate products as a vendor, but really the whole workflow. I mean, with Signals, think of it this way, right? It is today the hub in the lab. It is, as you look at the new paradigm of what we call AI augmented discovery, tens of thousands of scientists today already spend a majority of their day on the Signals platform.
Wow.
So, it's the environment where they plan experiments, collect results, and visualize outcomes. So it's the natural place to integrate predictive models without requiring scientists to be computational experts. That is sort of the vision that we have. You're there, the data is there, we are providing the juice for you, we are providing everything that you need. And this becomes essentially the marketplace for how you do AI augmented drug discovery.
And it's so necessary because the science is evolving in such a way that it's becoming far more complex, right? So there's obviously genomics, but it's all the omics now. And as we get into much more sophisticated drug discovery, we're going to find multi-omic analysis of data. So now we're looking at the genomics, we're looking at the proteomics, we're looking at the lipidomics, we're looking at potentially real world data in the form of environmental data and how that affects you and your genomics. We're looking at also complex gene-gene interactions, protein-protein interactions. So the level of scientific inquiry is going to, if it hasn't already, it definitely has already, surpassed what a human mind can just process all on its own. And so we need these very advanced analytical systems that help us gather all of the relevant information and make sense of it so that then we can bring in the magic sauce, which we humans have, which is finding some of these patterns and trying to direct the course of discovery to say, okay, with all of this knowledge, how do we now discover new drugs? And so I can see the need for something like this becoming just ever more necessary and critical as time progresses.
And the way we envision, at least, we've already have a track record on building complex software technology. So that's a given. But really, how do we partner with all these multi-modalities and groups to build the best model? At the end of the day, what you're doing is you've got to create seamless user experience, ensure that the data foundation is secure and scalable. With Signals, we'll be able to place this with scientists around the world that allows them to access high quality predictive tools. That is what, becomes, honestly, that really is the need of the hour. And with us being uniquely positioned to provide that kind of leadership to our customers, it helps them deliver on the promise to accelerate drug discovery. And that, uniquely allows them to bring new therapies to market, especially for complex diseases now, much faster. And then that's sort of the vision that we clearly have around where we are going to take the business.
That's fascinating, and of course, it's an evolving story because the science is evolving. Revvity is clearly evolving. If we think about the pace of innovation at Revvity, how do you balance short-term financial performance with long-term transformation in the work that you're doing? This is part of the journey that I was there in building the innovation lab and starting Signals. It's not easy for a company to invest in organic innovation because it's uncertain. It can take a long time, and yet you have market pressures to deliver on quarterly returns. So, how do you think about short-term versus long-term innovation and investment?
Yeah. Look, we are a public company. Our number one priority is to deliver differentiated growth profile to our shareholders, provide the best products to our customers that meets their needs, ensure that our employees have a great work experience that allows them to fulfill both their professional and personal growth. And then sort of this is not this is not a complex thought process, right? You just The number one thing is how do you execute? And our North Star truly is around innovation. We strongly believe that it's going to be innovation that's going to be, look, we don't have the size and scale of some of our peers, right? And we are not looking at being a commodity player. So we've got to have something that differentiates us and gives us the differentiated financial profile. And for us, that is innovation. Whether it's around personalized or precision medicine, as you pointed out, or providing differentiated solutions in this multi-omics world. That is where our focus is to drive innovation and truly partner with our customers. Today, if you go into a Harvard immunology lab, you'll have a tough time being able to figure out who is a Revvity employee and who's a bench scientist from Harvard. That is how closely we are tied at the hip in terms of discovering the right epitopes on what antibodies we should be developing in our labs. And then the same, if you recall the user group meetings that we used to have on the Signal side of the business, 2-3 times a year, where our user groups define and sort of decide what our NPI pipeline looks like on the Signal side of the business. So to be able to provide the right outcome, those are the execution. Those are I would say drivers that we need to continue to flawlessly execute on. Obviously, we are able to do that a whole lot better in a market environment which is more normal than where we are today. But look, it's going to happen sooner than later. I mean, we've had now 2.5 year period where the market has been, I would say, on a downturn. But over the last couple of quarters, we've started seeing it come back to what I would say a stable market environment. And hopefully we start seeing it coming back to growth in 2026.
And the rebrand, if we go back to that for a second, it was part of redefining and reinventing PerkinElmer for the future, for like we talked about under the new vision of Revvity and becoming, like you just said, innovative. That's the lifeblood of the corporation. It wasn't the only change because also you changed headquarters, right? You same town, but now you complete it. So in essence, you redefine the organization from a brand, from a positioning. Did it also involve any change in culture or processes in a way that you can also set the internal organization up for remaining and becoming more agile and innovative? Not that it wasn't before, but this gives you an opportunity to say, let's just redo the whole thing and position ourselves for that innovation thread for the next 10, 20 years.
Absolutely. I mean, everything needed to be thought through and redefined. If I were to humanize PerkinElmer and Revvity, right? Think of PerkinElmer as an engineer my age, with glasses and looking into a spectrophotometer or a lens or an instrument. Revvity is a 28, 30-year-old scientist still with glasses on, probably somewhere around the globe, staring into a DNA or a chromosome. So, as I said, if you were to humanize the two, that's sort of what it has changed. The average age of the employee base has gone down by 8 years. It's a totally different work and employee group today than what it was. And for that, we needed to change the space, the colors, the brand, how we operate, how, our operating mechanism, everything needed to change. Take the good and evolve to something different that needed to change with what the new company was going to look like was what our focus was.
It's incredible, and I really need to come and visit you at the office at some point just to kind of see and look around because it feels and it sounds like an entirely different company than the one that I was in, and it's incredible to see how again you've redefined an organization that's been around for so long and positioned it for the future. So if we think about that future path, what are the sciences, technologies that get you the most excited? And how do you envision this industry evolving over the next 5 or 10 years?
I mean, one of them you pointed out earlier is the work around rare diseases and genomics, right? Uh, you lead a group of consortium around that. That is a big driver for what we are part of, right? Our work with Genomics England is an example, and then some other countries and states that we do that. Identifying and working towards rare diseases, not just in the diagnosis of it, but also partnering with pharma biotech in developing therapeutics for them. So think of it, the way we think of disease, and especially around life sciences and diagnostic, is as a workflow, and the chasm between life sciences and diagnostics continues to narrow. You discover new therapeutics, then you develop companion diagnostics that need to go with these therapeutics, and then you eventually detect the impact of those therapeutics and continue to monitor. So sort of it's a full workflow from discovery to the clinic. And we are a partner of pharma biotech and diagnostics throughout this journey. And that is sort of the common thread that we have in terms of our offerings to our customers. And I think this evolution on the discovery side, in terms of how drug discovery is going to rapidly accelerate, but at the same time, it will get more complex simply because of what we are seeing with rare diseases, that now we have an opportunity to bring therapeutic, diseases that did not have uh, a solution or a way to solve for them or a way to treat them. Now there is hope and there is an opportunity. And this is the beauty of science. And that's when I was saying, for us, the motivation is how you can take something that is, from a lab bench to actually impacting patient care through therapies or through diagnosis and screening is where we play a role, and something that, excites us to come into work every day.
Yeah, and the breadth of services in this space that Revvity provides is breathtaking, from reagents in the lab all the way through um, newborn screening and genomics. And as you mentioned a second ago, with genomics, uh, where it stands today, especially when it comes to newborns, we're really at the cusp of this becoming a real thing, right? So for the last 10 years or so, it's been in the research setting. So a lot of research trials, 5 or so here in the US and many abroad. This year marks the first year where some of these programs are starting to transition to in clinical implementation at scale. Just within the last 2 months, there was a program in Puglia, Italy, that launched to do newborn genomic screening for their population. And then last month, another program in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi that they launched as well to be able to screen genomically. And that just transitions us to an entirely new field of preventive care. Now, at some point, we can envision every baby being screened genetically, which opens up from dozens of diseases to hundreds that are potentially detectable and actionable and treatable at the point of care. And it starts eliminating some of that diagnostic odyssey. So now diagnostics becomes much more important. Like you said, therapeutics as well. There was that well-known case earlier this year with baby KJ, where they found that metabolic disease, and using CRISPR, they effectively cured him from that disease. Now, relatively speaking, we're not that far from that becoming a reality, right? That's N of 1 right now, and it's incredibly complicated and very expensive. But so was genomic sequencing 20 years ago. Now we can envision almost a future where babies are screened, things are detected, and we intervene before they become a real thing, potentially monitoring all the way to curing babies right at the point of care. And I see Revvity being positioned exquisitely for that entire workflow, as you mentioned a second ago.
Yeah, I mean, we are fortunate enough to say that, you've heard me say that, if we come into work in the morning and we leave the day and we don't screw up, we've saved 75 newborns.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need any more motivation than that to come into work. No, that is sort of how we feel about what we do. We nearly touch every newborn in the US, at birth. And one way or the other, in helping them screen for inborn errors of metabolism or genetic disorders. But as you rightly pointed out, the science continues to evolve, but at a much faster pace than it has evolved over the past couple of decades. And our responsibility, not just our job, is to ensure that we not only provide the right tools, capabilities to our partners who are screening, but more importantly, provide them to newborns around the world. There are still 100 million newborns around the globe who are not screened for any disorder at birth. So there is still a lot of work for us to do. And that is something that, keeps us passionate and awake at night, so that we continue to provide these services to newborns around the world.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few professions out there that are more fulfilling than saving babies, right? Um, so Prahlad, you've been so generous with your time. I like to finish off with a singular question that only you can answer. And this is going to be a hard one because you're still very much making change and you've accomplished so much already. But if you can somehow envision some point in the future, 5, 10 years, whatever is relevant, where over the course of your tenure leading this company or others, that you could look back and reflect on what you've accomplished and think about a best case scenario, what that looks like, that made you feel that you've achieved the full impact of what you were capable of. What accomplishments or changes in the industry would make you the proudest and give you the deepest sense of fulfillment when you look back?
Yeah, I think there are. I would break it down into three buckets. And if you've gone through the rigors of science as a postgraduate, you just start taking any problem and solve it into or any challenge and then break it down into smaller challenges and address them as such. The way I look at it, number one is from the impact that you can have on the planet. Right? I firmly believe that we are really uniquely positioned with what we have to bring to the table in terms of helping accelerate drug discovery and bring new therapies to the world. There is no other company on the planet who has both the wet chemistry side of it or the wet science side of it and the software side of it to be able to leverage it together to accelerate drug discovery. you know and then we talked about how you can at the same time screen and diagnose new diseases and disorders. So the impact that we can have on human health is one that we are most passionate about. The second, given the portfolio transformation that we have gone through, again, provide a differentiated financial profile that highly beneficial to our shareholders is one that our focus is on. And third, but more importantly, is our employee. You know, my true legacy, I hope, will be when our employees feel the proudest about the work that they have done and the impact that they have had on this planet. That's what will be the most fulfilling, that you take pride in what you have accomplished and the path that we've sort of set for our future growth in terms of how we put Revvity in a place that it will continue to have an impact on people's lives.
Well, Prahlad, I, for one, having worked with you, take immense pride in the part that I played in helping Revvity become what it is right now, at least with the Signals platform. It was a privilege working with you. I very much enjoyed our years overlapping together at PerkinElmer back in the day, and it really has been such an honor having you here on the podcast. Thank you so much for your generosity and for your thoughts, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Nick. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
That was Prahlad Singh, now Unnatural Signals.
What Prahlad did here wasn't incremental, it was structural. Instead of polishing the edges, he changed the shape of the organization, deciding what Revvity needed to become in order to stay relevant for the next 20 years. The signals that we're archiving are: real transformation often requires lowering the average age of an organization's focus, not just its people, but its priorities. A name change only works when it reflects a deeper operational shift. Designing for a younger generation of scientists means rethinking how work actually feels, not just how it's described. And sometimes, innovation means redoing the whole thing, not optimizing the parts. This wasn't about managing change. It was about choosing evolution, deliberately and without nostalgia.
Thanks for listening to Unnatural Selection. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone shaping the future. Explore more at unnaturalselection.net and connect with us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Until next time, keep evolving.